What really compels me to make documentary as opposed to narrative or as opposed to anything else is that I think documentary really leans on your intuition. You have to be this sort of astute analyzer of all the things that are happening in front of you. What I love about doc is like you're coming up with this plan, and at every given moment, that plan is worse and worse and worse. And so you have to kind of constantly be remaking this roadmap that you had established and thought was this great film that you were going to make. My intuition as a filmmaker and my need to improv better suits the documentary style, and the beauty is sort of flowing with that. I heard this. Let's take that. Let's kind of follow these paths. And I think as somebody who is an observer, I think that's where that juice is. That's where like that squeeze is. I am Alex Donnelly, and I am a culture builder. Yeah, I mean, my love for this medium like really started. I said it started when I was 12, and that was only because anytime I hung out with my cousins or went over to family members, I was like digging through to try and find VHS tapes to just film little skits with my family members. And it wasn't even about what we were making. It was just like the tangibility and the creativity of this like impromptu, trying to come up with stuff, trying to put things together, and like seeing how the camera interpreted it versus how I felt about it, and trying to synthesize those two things together. But that bug bit me, and it bit me hard, and I just kind of never let go of that passion. And so my whole career has kind of been based in that like 12-year-old kid's mindset of just being like, let's do this because it brings us joy. Let's do this because it's fun, and it's a creative outlet. I grew up, my dad was a painter, my mom's a creative as well, and so there was always this like need to express myself, and that one just really stuck. But it's manifested a dozen times over now as a documentary filmmaker, but I also own a production company. We do commercials, we do docu-style shorts, that kind of thing, but it's like I said, it's just been that bug that bit me and hasn't let go. Grew up on Lake Michigan. I wasn't one of the families that was fortunate to have a home on the beach, but we were at the beach every weekend. People are still surfing on Lake Michigan, despite what people think. And there was a very short period where I was filming people surfing and thinking, oh, I'll get into sports. I'll get into like being that guy. But because I grew up in this tiny little town, I was really the only guy who was filming things. I was the only guy who was like making things with a camera. And I think, my first few cameras were VHS tape cameras. I couldn't even tell. They're all like, these Panasonic and then a list of numbers and letters, right? VHS to DV to mini DV to digital, and I just would try and get my hand on anything. Yeah, I come from a tiny little town in West Michigan called Spring Lake. It's kind of a nothing town. I think their motto is 7 miles of smiles. It's like just that small, and there's nobody from that town. And there just wasn't a lot to do. So I just like got a camera in my hand as often as I could. I think one of my favorite like early memories is just falling in love with The Departed. It was just like this movie that I was like, it had kind of all of those scenes, all of that action, like the complexity of story that I think everybody kind of aspires to as a really young person. And so me and my friends remade it. I'm 14 playing a 35-year-old gangster with fake guns, fake blood out in, the woods of Lake Michigan, or near Lake Michigan. And anytime I could get my hands on a camera, anytime I could develop a story, that was where I wanted to be. Pontificating about how to take what I was supposed to be doing and turning it into having a camera in my hand, or editing, or just learning that medium. Because in that tiny little town, it wasn't like I had access to know what the fuck a C-stand is or any of that. It was just like, let's grip it and rip it and just try and make something. So I'd burn shit to DVDs, hand them out to my friends, like as if what I was sending was watchable in any form. But it brought me so much joy. I was just dead set on this is my narrative. At the age of 12, I was just I think I was at my cousin's house in their basement, and they like pulled out this camera that their mom probably bought, and it's big ass VHS tape. Immediately like got in my hands and was like, we're making skits, we're making little videos, we're going out into the yard and turning that what would be just normal kid stuff, play pretend, into trying to make a movie and trying to replicate things. I think I didn't have this like grand sort of cinematic influence early on. I mean, I was in love with like John Hughes movies, like that was my love. Like John Cusack as an idol was where I like those kinds of movies were the ones I attached myself to. And anytime I could get my hands on a camera, it was like I knew it just felt right. And that's that distinction. And I was always that kid who was from a very young age was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm just trying to slam on the accelerator to try and get to that point. So getting through high school, getting through college, getting through the menial jobs to start up my own production company. These were the things that I was just trying to get to. And now, yeah, it's manifested a dozen times over. I own a production company. We do commercials. We do docu-style ads. We do a little bit of everything. But then this other side of it is this more original content that we're doing. The rugby TV show. I've got a feature coming out soon. So it's just really run the gambit. And I'm trying to just get my hands on or around cameras as often as I can. It's just an insatiable need. What really compels me to make documentary as opposed to narrative or as opposed to anything else is that I think documentary really leans on your intuition. You have to be this sort of astute analyzer of all the things that are happening in front of you. What I love about doc is like you're coming up with this plan, and at every given moment, that plan is worse and worse and worse. And so you have to kind of constantly be remaking this roadmap that you had established and thought was this great film that you were going to make. Narrative to me is a beautiful thing. I've had my hands in it. I've done it. I love it. And I grew up on it. I grew up on narrative. I'm not going to sit here and say I'm like an avid watcher of documentary, but my intuition as a filmmaker and my need to improv better suits the documentary style. And I think there's just this like, to sort of oversell it, it's like this gladiatorial thing where you walk in, you have no idea what to expect, you have no idea what your tools are going to be really, and you don't know how you're going to walk out of there. And if you can walk in with a degree of confidence, you have some sort of plan, great. The beauty is sort of flowing with that, I heard this, let's take that, let's kind of follow these paths. And I think as somebody who is an observer, I think that's where that juice is, that's where like that squeeze is. It's a great question. I think, Herzog is... Yeah. I mean, some of my favorite docs and documentary filmmakers are like Herzog is just a goon. He's just an absolute freak. But I love his commitment. And I love the, like, whatever I do is in service of the project, and whatever I want is just about getting to that finish line of, here's my movie, that's it, there it is. And that blind faith and love in the project. But I also think, like, a lot of the way that I approach making documentary is from a narrative perspective. What can be done visually to enhance the feel? Because I think when people are like, oh, you're a documentary filmmaker, it's very much... You're making these boring 60 minutes sort of explainer Ken Burns things, and there's no sex appeal there. And so when I'm drawing ideation or visuals or ideas for movies, it's like, how can we make it look like a multi-million-dollar narrative movie? How can we get this scene to be lit in a way that we just give it a little extra flavor? I'm not a purist. I'm not a journalist. I'm not trying to be like, well, I'm not going to move that because that's how I'll fucking move it and turn it and make it so that the scene plays better. I'll turn this light so that there's a little bit more key on me, whatever. Because I think the second you show up to set as a documentary filmmaker, you've already changed the system. You've already changed the environment. You can be a fly on the wall as much as you'd like, but people react differently to cameras. People react in a way that may be reserved or maybe very forward, and they're all exercised and like they really want to be in front of the camera. But that little shift is something that we have to kind of play with, and I don't think it should stop you from making the scene better in whatever way. Yeah, my advice to somebody who's like looking for a purpose or looking for that thing that gives them that spark is throw everything at the wall. If you don't have that distinct passion and that thing that's driving you, that's like bloodthirst, I want to do that, it's a hard thing. From 12 years old, I said, this is what I'm going to do, and I haven't stopped. I love that Seth Rogen quote, which is something like, in terms of if you're going to make it or not, it's like, if you keep going, you might make it, but if you quit, you absolutely won't. And that's how I felt, is that maybe every year I'm getting a little bit better, but because I haven't quit, we're always on the trajectory upwards. But in terms of finding a purpose and you can't ID it or you can't find it, I think the most beautiful thing is that we have the capability to try anything. And I think you should. Talk about life's purpose. I don't think there is one. I don't think we have a purpose. I think having a good time is great. Ultimately, are we here for something? I personally don't think so. So if that's true, then we should just have a good time doing it. And I think because we're capable of trying to pick up a guitar and give it a little go, being terrible at it, move on to piano, give that a little go, terrible at it, go try and be a landscaper. Is that your passion? Great. I think all of those things are as beautiful as the other, but you're not going to find that passion, that purpose, by just like staring at a wall and hoping it hits you. Coming from the guy who's found one, stuck to it, and never let it go. Which sometimes I do think about. I think, can you be a multi-purpose? Can you be a multi-passioned individual? I think, it's hard to say. So I grew up Roman Catholic, which is like deep in the sauce in terms of Christianity. I'm certainly not that anymore. And I think a lot of the reason I'm not is because I was in those rooms asking a ton of questions. Why? So why is it this way? Why does that happen? Why is this a part of that story? Why are we saying that? Any why. And if I couldn't get a direct answer, that felt like a fallacy in the narrative. And that's a lot of the way that I approach documentary, is that I will push you. I always like to say, I'll ask you why until your eyes bleed. And I want to keep going because I think everybody does have that distinct passion, whether you've ID'd it or not. If we can like really look at each other and really have that dynamic conversation, and I can eventually continue to fall down on those whys until I hear, because of this singular moment in my childhood that like made me feel a specific way, I'll use that. And I'll use that to identify you in that documentary or in that piece that makes people more relatable. Because a lot of our whys are all the same. I want to be loved. I want to feel like I'm enough. I want to be happy, and those are sort of bottom line foundational whys. But I think once we find those together, we're all a little bit more relatable to each other. I'm Alex Donnelly, and you're watching 24/7 HH.